Started it. Almost. Hello, everybody. Hey, Constantine's here. How you doing, Constantine?
Hello, doing all right.
Cool. Uh, yeah, this is kind of the awkward first few minutes while we have to wait for people to join. I don't know. Uh, Constantine, are you doing a fundraiser?
No, I'm actually not doing any fundraisers yet. No, I'm going to start one on Monday.
Okay.
Oh, we can start one now if you want.
Oh, but Tonya is collecting Constantine. She's
the fund is always collecting. So
yeah. Also, she's going to Ukraine. I think she said next week, and there's like a tough timeline. If you want to help out, you can still purchase things from the Amazon wish list.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess I could put the link for that up.
She tweeted about it, I think, today.
Let me find it. Let me find the tweet. Yeah. So I don't know. Let me find it. Oh yeah. This is it. This is the tweet. I'm gonna put the tweet in the description of the video, and people who are interested can go look at that. Yeah. Where did I put the tweet? Oh, I lost it. Okay, here I found it again. Here. There's an Amazon wish list right here, and there's socks and gloves and pants and shirts and all the things that you may need. Hearing protection, binoculars. So if you'd like to contribute to that Amazon wish list, there's still a few days, I imagine, right? Or is Liberty Ukraine sending it? I don't know.
Oh no, you can send it as like even if you do it later, we're just gonna deliver it. It's just an endless stream of aid to Ukraine. It's not just like one time thing.
It is truly endless. They do so much. It's like they just keep giving and giving. Did they do presents for children again this year? Because I didn't see it. My mom was angry. I didn't send it to her. Maybe I missed it. Anyways, I guess we could talk about news. Dick, what news is there? Well, I guess we could talk about the what happened yesterday. Wait, where'd it go? I'm confused. Oh yeah, here. What happened yesterday with the Lancet? I don't know, Gick, would you like to talk about the Lancet? Or should I talk about it?
Well, there's good and there's bad.
Yeah.
The bad thing is Lancets are still able to hit airfields pretty far in the back. I think how long is this? Like 70 kilometers?
Yeah, it's like 65 from the river.
Yeah. So very far in the rear. So Lancets still hit there. Russia's still able to have recon drones there.
Yeah.
So that's the bad part. It did hit an airframe.
Yeah. So I'll tell a story. Yesterday, the video came out of a Lancet hitting this airframe, which looks like an Su-25, which is an extraordinarily important airplane for Ukraine because it's really their only close air support. It's that or a helicopter. So this is an extremely important airplane. So when it came out, the first thing I wondered was, is this new or old? And it turned out that it is new. On the Sentinel image that came out yesterday morning, you can see this you can see two scorch marks on the Sentinel. Basically, there's one right here where the plane was, and one a little bit south, like right here. Now, I have no clue what that Sentinel was, what the second scorch mark was. It is very significantly smaller than the first. It's maybe half the size. Maybe I don't know. I have no clue what that second scorch mark is, but both scorch marks are new, and so that kind of limited the timeline a bit. Then on further inspection, our friend Brian, who is a satellite expert, he determined that there was a fire in the exact location of the scorch mark yesterday. So this it seems that this was hit yesterday. That there was a measurable fire exactly on the scorch mark. So it wasn't even from 2 days ago. It was literally yesterday that this happened. So that answered one question. The other question was looking at the video, I immediately thought the plane was fake. But I thought the first plane was fake. Remember? Like the MiG or whatever it was. I really thought it was fake. And while we were digging into when this happened, there were a lot of people coming out with a lot of analysis on basically the plane probably isn't real. So there's a number of features in this plane that you can look at that aren't very realistic looking. So first, the cockpit is dubious. It doesn't even appear to be made of glass to me. Like it kind of looks like it's made of plastic, and the metal, what are they called, like struts or whatever. Anyway, the metal pieces of the cockpit looked like there's just like pencil thin, like painted on. Anyways, the wing of the actual plane is like the engine goes over the wing, right? So like it's a smooth transition from the engine to the wing. It's not whereas here, like the engine goes up and then goes under the wing, and the wing is like above the engine, so that's wrong. This outboard thing like here, this is the on the real plane. This is the air brake. It opens kind of like a book and slows down the plane. On this, it's way too thin, and on this image you can't really see it, but it looks like there's like a tongued groove down the middle, that like the sort of groove that you see on like a sword, like it's like
Andrew, I send you a picture in Telegram so
Okay.
that you can show to compare.
Okay. Let me,
So we can.
okay. Here. So out here you can see that this is the air brake, and it opens outwards and it opens like a book to slow down the plane. And you see that in this it's relatively flat except for this little bump in the middle that goes up, that noticeably bumps up, and on the bottom there's like this fin. And in the plane here there's a groove, like a tongued groove that goes down. There's no, the bumpy thing on the top is not there, and you can't see a fin on the bottom. Although perhaps the fin is just you
Well,
can't see on this
I
angle.
would say like those like things on the tips of the wings, as maybe some modernization, different versions, some equipment may be installed, but
I don't think
the
so.
key for me is this thing is the engines themselves. You do not like modernize plane to suspend the engines underneath when they're integrated inside the wings. So this what really makes it look different.
Yeah. So, and you can see that the cockpit here doesn't even look like glass. It honestly looks like plastic or wood or something. So, uh, anyway, the whole plane looks fake. It just
There's one more detail, by the way, which someone noticed. If you look at the shadow of the wheel, of the nose wheel.
yeah, it's kind of bent.
Yeah, it's entirely different. It's like not that narrow in the with the original plane.
Yeah. So all in all, I think it's very obvious this isn't a real plane. The paint job is also weird, but whatever.
By the way,
oh boy. I minimized everything by accident. Okay, sorry.
but you're still streaming on YouTube.
Oh, yeah. I just
So let me tell you something while you're mad at what just happened. Let me tell you something to get you really mad. All of that search for when did it happen could have been a lot easier, because the video, when it was posted, they actually had probably an amateur editor for the video itself who was, hiding the details of the drone interface, and you could actually remove that layer. So what I shared with you on Discord is actually the screenshot of that very video. If you remove that layer hiding the interface, and you can see both the coordinates, you can see the exact date, and so on.
it's pretty funny. But yeah, it was nice to just have external confirmation of. I mean, obviously, we don't have a time code, or I guess this is a time code, but we didn't have a time code, but we did confirm it. It was yesterday. That was it was honestly worrying, in a sense. It just it's infuriating that they're able to do these attacks in the first place. That is really really annoying. I don't know, John, do you want to talk about that?
I just joined. Talk about what? Sorry.
The lack of hangars. The Lancet attack on the plane.
Right. So, and forgive my audio quality on my earbuds right now. Yeah. So there's a distinct lack of hangars, or really more specifically, hardened aircraft shelters, as they would be called, in both Ukraine and on many Russian airfields. I know the Russians have some of them at some airfields in a couple places in Russia, but it's not massively widespread. Typically speaking, what we just see is we'll see dispersals. So they'll have, the flight line, the apron, that concrete, that large concrete area next to the runway and the taxiways. And then branching off from that, you'll have like little paved roads. And then, attached to each of those, you'll have usually like a concrete pad, usually surrounded by a revetment, and then you'll park the aircraft there. That was pretty standard airfield design for the Soviet Union, the Warsaw Pact, and also, for NATO and the West during the Cold War. But there was very much a discrepancy in that we tended to build a large number of hardened aircraft shelters because the expectation was that aircraft needed to be protected from both thermal damage and overpressure from nuclear detonations. And so, we had a lot of hardened aircraft shelters partially because we had a lot of airfields specifically operated to facilitate the delivery of nuclear weapons by tactical aviation. The Russians, they just had a lot of airfields where that wasn't the case, or I should say the Soviets, and obviously that carried over into, present-day Ukraine and present-day Russia. A hardened aircraft shelter in the traditional sense is usually rated to defeat munitions on the order of 2,000 to 4,000 pounds. They are, very large structures made of reinforced concrete. They are very expensive and time-consuming to build. So a traditional hardened aircraft shelter would probably not be appropriate. for many of the airfields in Ukraine, particularly the one near Kryvyi, where we've seen these Lancet strikes, just simply because building a proper Haas would take a while. It would be very expensive. It would be blindingly obvious to the Russians. And, then at that point, they could try to start leveraging, things like Iskander-Ms, etc. The smarter option is probably in the short term to just build lighter hangars that can, say, withstand 50-pound to 100-pound warheads. That's much more doable. It allows you to defeat things like, Lancets and other small UAVs. Again, obviously, if the Russians decide they want to drop an Iskander-M, a cruise missile, UMPK, or any other, very Smerch, for example, Tornado S, that's not going to do much against it, but it will at least create, raise that minimum threshold for the type of asset that you need to leverage to be able to damage, neutralize, or otherwise destroy the aircraft operating from that airbase.
Yeah. So, I mean, I imagine it wouldn't take that much to stop a Lancet. Because, well, first, I'm not sure Russia can, hit these areas with bombs right now, anyway. Because their bombs appear to have a range of about 70 kilometers. And this is 70 kilometers behind the front. Like, they would have to, fly to the front to drop the bomb. And that would be kind of counterproductive in the point of why they're even using those bombs in the first place, to put their planes directly into danger like that. Although, and then there's the other threat of the missiles, which you can't do anything against anyway, so you can't stop those missiles. At least, the larger like ballistic missiles and stuff. There's nothing Ukraine could do to stop them. Without moving up like a Patriot or something, which they're never going to do to protect these things. So your only real threat would be Lancets, Shaheds, and maybe like a
Tornado S.
Yeah, the Tornado. So, how?
I mean, the smart thing would be, again, and I say this, but obviously the fact that we were sitting here discussing this probably indicates that that's not possible. I mean, the smart thing would be to minimize operations at that airfield, just given its proximity to the front. The fact that the Ukrainian Air Force has continued to operate airframes from there suggests to me, assuming that there's some rational and competent decision making behind this, that there's some reason that they can't, that perhaps, depending on the manner in which they've chosen to disperse their sustainment capacity for, to support these airframes, it might not be readily possible for them to shift that burden to concentrate it at a slightly smaller number of air bases. Or perhaps they don't want to take that potential additional risk that it would create for these airframes to have them operating from, one fewer air base to have just a couple more airframes at one or two other air bases. Again, there could be a very rational calculus behind this. It's obviously hard to say without having, full access to vast amounts of, non-public information. And obviously, again, in the short term, the things to do would be build hangars that can defeat, Group 2, maybe Group 3 UAS threats, small munitions, that type of thing. Get some SHORAD there. And again, I say this, there's a critical shortage of SHORAD and counter UAS assets. But, an airfield needs them. So that needs to be something that is addressed. Obviously, if there's any electronic warfare assets that can be made available to complement that would be excellent as well. But yeah, that's kind of the extent of what can be done. Again, if Russia decides it wants to use Tornado S, Iskander-M, or a cruise missile, there's not much that can be done unless you actually want to go to the effort of trying to build a proper hardened aircraft shelter.
I mean, John, at the same time, I would highlight that I'm not sure, or I don't think we can necessarily say that the airfield is, operating with stationed airplanes, because that close to the front, we might also be looking at an airfield which is just restocking and refueling
That is true. Yeah, they could be doing what is it called, a hot refueling, where they just land, top up, then leave or rearm. That's possible. And again, if that is the case, the part of developing the countermeasures here for the Ukrainians is going to be figuring out how they can streamline and make that process even more efficient to decrease the time that they are on the ground at that airfield. And also potentially doing things like, fundamentally changing the timetable of when they're doing that. So, for example, instead of doing that in the day, if, I'm not sure if the Lancet has thermal optics or not, but let's just say
it does.
Oh, well, never mind. I was going to say land at night, but it has thermal optics, so never mind.
Yeah, they've even been using the Lancets at night to attack boats, which is weird to me. It's just weird to use a Lancet on a boat, but they do, like a little rubber dinghy. Well, first, I just want to say thank you to Violet for donating the subscriptions. So thank you, because that was a lot of subscriptions. She donated like 50, a lot. Thank you. But yeah, I imagine that Ukraine is not actually storing planes there. I can't wrap my head around them doing it. Like, it hurts my brain to think about.
What I would say is that, I guess anecdotally, what I've heard kind of, Caliber Obscura and some others talk about this, is that between the the various service branches of the ZSU, the Ukrainian Air Force is by far the most, creative, adaptive, responsive, quick thinking. They're the most institutionally lean organization relative to the ground forces, just the Navy. So I would hope that they know what they're doing here. I would really hope. But yeah.
These decoys, because I'm almost certain the first plane was a decoy, the MiG, and this one is definitely a decoy. So it seems that at least half of these Lancets were hitting decoys. It just strikes me that it could be that just all the planes are decoys. Like, maybe they're just moving decoys around constantly, which is completely logical to me.
I'm pretty sure some of them. I mean, there were one or two. I think the MiG there was a MiG 29 that looked essentially, it looked real. Like I'd not find, neither I nor any of the Soviet aviation gurus I know, none of us found anything to indicate that it was a decoy. It exploded and burnt like a real aircraft. There were people next to it.
Yeah, that one was definitely real. I think that was like the second plane. The first plane, I'm almost certain, was a decoy. The second and the third, I think, were both real. And this one is a decoy. Was the third plane a Su-25? I can't remember.
No, I think it was all mixed, wasn't it?
Okay.
But I wonder how expensive is such a decoy in that detail.
I have no idea.
Is it more expensive than a hangar?
I really doubt that. No, I really doubt that. I have no idea how much a decoy costs, but
yeah, but I mean, think about it. Putting simple metal structures there to obstruct the view might as well attract as many Lancets as a decoy of a plane.
yeah.
And I think you could get a small metal structure, the size of a plane.
Well, the other thing is, and so this is the fun part, the other aspect of hardened aircraft shelters, or just hangars in general, is that aside from the direct physical protection it potentially provides, it seriously obstructs hostile eye-star. So if you build a hangar or a structure over heavy revetment, it's going to be very difficult for the Russians to actually figure out if there's an aircraft there at any given time.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the biggest value, personally. Like, even if it can't protect the plane, it just they wouldn't know where the plane is.
Yeah, you'd have to have continuous surveillance of the site to be able to see aircraft, landing or taking off, and seeing the the hangar structures that they go into. And unless of course you just want to go maximum approach and just hit all of the hangars simultaneously.
Yeah, that's
John,
strategy.
I'm confused. I'm confused because what you just said is exactly what I thought I said.
Yeah.
But apparently my foreign tongue didn't bring it across. I'm listening to you and I'm just super confused.
Yeah. Well, anyways, this is one issue. Last night, I don't know if this is related. Like, I honestly have no idea. But this same area was hit by KH-59. I have no clue what that missile hit, but it hit something. And I think it was hit with a KH-59 the day before that too, and maybe even the day before that. So yeah, they've been firing a lot of cruise missiles over here, and apparently Lancets as well. Anyways, moving on. Anyway, John, do you have any news that you'd like to talk about? Oh, there is one piece of news you could talk about.
Oh, is it GLSDB, or did
Yeah.
I already talk about Did I talk about that the other day?
No.
Okay, so sorry, and I talked about a bond last night. That's like,
Yeah, yeah. There's the GLSDB. There's an update on it. The update is bad news. It's not coming soon.
Yeah. So I guess there's two things I can talk about. I can talk about GLSDB, and I can talk about some of the Shahed evolution stuff, which is kind of interesting. So I guess to start off with the GLSDB, Reuters reported that yesterday, I believe, or yesterday morning, that GLSDB has been delayed from the previously published delivery schedule of having them in theater in Ukraine by December, to rather having them delivered to the DoD by December, followed by several months of testing and then delivery to Ukraine. Sometime early next year. So probably we're talking late Q1, maybe early Q2, 2024. My read of that is, so what you have to understand is that the rounds that the DoD will be taking delivery of in December, those are going to be the first rounds produced by the actual production line. So Boeing and Saab, they did test shots with basically a couple prototypes in 2020, 2021, 2022, etc. More than likely, I don't have explicit confirmation of this, but more than likely, just given my understanding of how these programs typically work, the rounds that they had expended in those prior test shots were more than likely essentially hand-built prototypes. So more than likely, it was quite literally built in a workshop, one of Saab's workshops in Sweden, where they, essentially hand make custom builds for prototyping and stuff like that. They probably built them there, then, did the test launch just to validate the concept. But obviously, the process that's used to manufacture those prototypes is significantly different from how you would actually manufacture the production missiles. And so the DoD is going to want to verify or really validate that the production line is producing the product, within the relevant specifications, relevant performance margins, reliability standards, et cetera. In other words, they're trying to verify that the QA quality assurance, the QC quality control is good, and that everything is working as intended with a product that, again, you're actually going to get in bulk as part of the production order. And so they did this with Prism, for example. I believe in September, the DoD took delivery of the first 4 LRIP, low-rate initial production units, Prism precision strike missile, which is the U.S. Army's successor to ATACMS. All 4 of those first units, the first 4 off the production line, as well as basically the next 8 units or so that come off the production line, are all going to be expended in test shots to validate that product is good. And what's likely happening with GLSDB is almost certainly exactly analogous to that, the DoD, especially because they're taking old solid rocket motors from M26 MLRS rocket, which was the original munition developed for use with the M270 MLRS, that carries the 600 DPICM submunitions. Those motors have a 25-year shelf life. They're all past it because production ended like in the early to mid 90s. So they're all well past their 25-year shelf life. So given that, those really old motors are going to have to be incorporated into every single GLSDB, pending, selection of the youngest, most healthy motors, potential motor refurbishment, the DoD is really going to want to validate that those motors are performing as intended, that they work reliably, and they aren't just going to explode on ignition. Because the risk that we run here is if we just up and send them to Ukraine without that testing, they could put the first LPC launch pod container in a HIMARS and have the whole thing explode on launch. That's the risk that we're trying to mitigate here. So more than likely, they're going to take these missiles, they're going to take the pods out to White Sands missile range. They have, HIMARS and MLRS there. They use for test launches. They're going to load them up and they're going to fire them. Again, make sure the missile works correctly. And more than likely, depending on what the status of the software baseline is to actually integrate. Oh my God.
You're back.
Okay, where did you lose me?
Integrating with HIMARS?
Right. So my understanding, okay, I guess for context here, Boeing and Saab, they were not necessarily offering GLSDB as being exclusively launched from HIMARS or MLRS. They were offering their own little, essentially towed trailer launcher, because one of the things that you can do with GLSDB, because it's basically rocket delivering a glide bomb to its normal release altitude, you have a lot more play with the actual target azimuth, essentially angle off axis from the, more or less from the central axis to the launcher of target that you can prosecute without having to actually rotate the launcher. You have a lot more, flexibility and range with that than you do with just a ballistic missile or, like Gimlers essentially. And that you can, prosecute targets, that are pretty significantly at a different angle than, again, that center line through the launcher. And so, again, they were originally, then I think they were doing testing from like an intermodal cargo container variant. I'm not sure if that was a specific launcher type they were offering for sale, or if that was the test rig that they had set up. But in any case, they were also saying it was supported by HIMARS and MLRS. That said, the U.S. Army controls the software baseline that's run on HIMARS and MLRS. My understanding is that there is an updated software baseline that enables GLSDB to be integrated with both of those systems. I had talked briefly to Jakub, formerly from Oryx's List, about this in January of this year. At the time, he said that per his contacts in the DoD, the software baseline was in principle ready. It was completed pending certification. So if that was actually the case, if his sources were correct, I would expect them, if they're actually ready to go to begin testing that integration, they'll want to specifically test launching from HIMARS and from MLRS, as opposed to whatever trailer launcher Boeing and Saab have. So that way they can, certify that integration works and certify that software baseline itself as ready, to be operationally fielded.
Cool. I have one question. This question is kind of irrelevant. I'm just curious. When you put it in HIMARS, is it gonna be like the same size of like a Gimler, or is its little nose gonna poke out? Okay. I was just curious. I just wanted to know if there was a little nose poking out.
So one of the whole things is, so with MLRS, M26 MLRS and M30, M31 Gimlers are the same length. What they basically did is, so M26 MLRS had a shorter rocket motor, solid rocket, a shorter SRM than Gimler's. And what they did was with the M26A1 and A2 MLRS ER, they lengthened the rocket motor and they shortened the payload section. So same overall length, but you got more range with fewer submunitions. So I think it went from like a 26-kilometer range with M26 to 45 kilometers with M20 with M26A1 and A2. And then with Gimler's, I think they lengthened it even more, and I'm pretty sure they changed the propellant composition to something higher performance. And that 45 or so kilometers became 80. So almost doubled it. And again, smaller warhead section, lighter payload. So when you actually sit down and look at it, my understanding based on the renderings that I've seen is that, again, you're going to have a shorter motor than the spacing from the adapter. It works out to essentially the same length as Gimler's, the same length as standard M26 MLRS, maybe slightly shorter. So it's, the length requirement on the LPC, the launch pod container, that's a hard limit. It cannot be longer than that, because if you have it poking out, it's not going to load correctly, and you're potentially going to have issues with like the environmental seal, because that's a all up round. It's supposed to basically have an airtight seal in there, so you can store it in there for like 20 years with minimal maintenance.
So there's a question for you that I put in the chat because I don't know what the question is asking, and I can't. You're gonna have to read it.
Okay, so with the UK's SuperCat system, so that's the ground-launched ASRAAM and AIM-132, which is a infrared-guided, originally air-to-air missile that's now been adapted to a surface-to-air missile role for the Ukrainians. Again, it's AIM-132 ASRAAM is produced by MBDA, and the Royal Air Force's standard short-range air-to-air missile. I believe it was at the HMT SuperCat, I think, is the chassis they mounted on it. The question's asking, it says there's no radar on it. The tasks are performed by the air-to-air missile. Would it be possible to fix such AA on a Smerch rocket, intercept a plane wide? I'm not exactly sure I follow what the question's asking. Is it? I think it's asking if you can take an ASRAAM and then attach it to another solid rocket motor and turn it into a 2-stage surface-to-air missile. I think if I'm reading this correctly. I mean,
let's just go with, can you shoot it from a Smerch?
Like from the tube?
With whatever. Like a
well,
like
I mean, we have to be specific. We have to be specific here. So I can't answer the question otherwise.
Well, I think that's the question. Is like
okay. Let me
whether you're putting it on an adapter rocket, or if you're just shooting it from the tube itself, or
okay. ASRAAM will fit in a Smerch tube because ASRAAM is way smaller than Smerch. ASRAAM is, was it like 160 something millimeters in diameter? Smerch is 300 millimeters in diameter. ASRAAM is like 3 meters long. A 9M whatever, the rocket that Smerch fires is 7 meters long. So yeah, it will fit in a Smerch launcher. I'm not sure why you would do that. But I guess you can physically shove it in the tube, if that's what you're asking. If what you're asking is if you can like put it on a Smerch rocket motor and try and extend the range by turning it into a 2-stage rocket, I mean, anything's possible, I guess. I don't see why you do that, given the cost and engineering effort that would have to go into that. That would actually take quite a bit of time, money, and resources to figure out. And it might also just be better to start with a new rocket motor, to be honest. I guess that would be my point, is that, the availability of Smerches is small enough that I don't really see that being worthwhile. And moreover, so Ukraine already manufactures in small quantities a precision guided version of Smerch called Vilha, or there's different versions. There's now Vilha M, etc., M1, M2. The Ukrainians already had a project to convert that into a surface-to-air missile system. I would say if you're going to try and do a surface-to-air missile system with Smerch, just get Vilha M, get that SAM-based system to work and put that into production. Just start from scratch with that. That would probably be better. And I don't even know if Vilha M as a SAM is a good idea to begin with. It's certainly an interesting one, but I mean, if that's a project that you want to pursue, I'd say start there instead of trying to put ASRAM onto a Smerch rocket motor as a 2-stage system.
Okay. So, yeah, I think that's all the rocket news we got. I lost my map. I need to find my map.
Do you want me to talk about some of the Shahed evolution?
Oh yeah, sure.
Right. So I guess there were a couple interesting things. The first one I think most of us have seen is that they were painting them black, which did not seem to, at least on that particular large raid on Kyiv with 70-something Shaheds, painting them black did not seem to help their visibility. It probably increased it a decent bit, especially against the winter sky. I'm not sure how effective that's going to be. It might be effective under certain weather conditions, depending on what the sky looks like. It might actually reduce visibility. In other cases, it might increase it. So I suspect the average value that you're going to get in terms of visible observability reduction is probably fairly minimal once you average it out over all uses. I'm not sure. I mean, what the appropriate way to approach a paint scheme for visibility reduction for a Shahed would be. That's just not my wheelhouse.
The newer ones, they seem to only like partially paint them black. It's like they have like a spray paint, and they paint like 80% of it or something in like straight lines. It looks like a little zebra.
Oh, like the dazzle pattern, or is it just straight lines?
There's just like, I think they don't want it to be totally black, and they're just kind of like waving their arm at it until it's like black enough for them, and it's just kind of like random like lines across the Shahed. So it's like it's partially gray, basically.
That's strange, but in any case, so the other two interesting things that I saw were the installation of SIM cards. I think for like Ukrainian cell networks on a couple of the sheds that are like duct taped on. I had talked to some software folks that I know kind of from the US side of things that have done some stuff with hardware and communications for various military weapon systems, and their comments were sort of that they can kind of see, and Samuel Bendet, he has a good post about this if you go to his page, quoting some Russian Telegram channels, that there's some things you could in theory do with this. You could potentially track the location of where the drone goes down after either being shot down or reaching its target. So you could potentially set up some system, and the US has done this, albeit not using SIM cards and cell networks. We use like satellite data links, much more sophisticated approaches, etc., to verify that it's actually reached its target and to verify that it like detonated to confirm effect on target, essentially. You could do it to potentially do mid-course updates in flight. That would be a lot more challenging, but something that's theoretically possible. Whether or not the Russian effort to experiment with SIM cards will actually result in anything like that successfully, I can't say, because it's a cell networks are outside my wheelhouse of expertise. So yeah, that's something they're very clearly experimenting with. They could go a couple different directions, and again, it's very much looks like an extremely rough prototype. They were quite literally duct taping them to the outside, to the external surfaces of the Shahed. So very clearly not something that's been cut into the production line yet. And then the other thing beyond that I thought was really interesting and hasn't been observed, I guess, in any of the public wreckage. And this is really some comments from, I believe, Anat, the spokesperson for the Ukrainian Air Force, as well as Skibitsky, the spokesperson for who are Ukrainian military intelligence. they had mentioned that amongst Russia's effort to indigenize the component production for the Shahed, so the engines, the the GNC guidance navigation control module, and various other parts of it. He mentioned that they were experimenting with a radio absorbent material coating to reduce its radar cross section, which I thought was quite interesting. I don't know. Again, it's hard to say if that will go anywhere, but them attempting to apply some sort of RAM coating to it would be, an effort to reduce the range at which Ukrainian radars can effectively detect Shaheds. This would, decrease the engagement distances and overall increase the likelihood that they can successfully penetrate Ukrainian air and missile defenses. That's going to add to unit costs. That's going to require them to install additional capacity to apply whatever this coating is to the Shaheds, and then there will be concerns, how well it's going to work in practice. One of the issues that the U.S. had, particularly with early formulations of radar absorbent materials, that it was essentially quite literally a coating that was applied to the outside. I would say kind of like paint, but not really. And so when exposed to environmental conditions, that coating could degrade and lose its efficacy over time as it was out deployed. You could potentially see that with Shaheds that are, potentially exposed to the elements setting on their launchers for, days to a few weeks, maybe, depending on the rate that they're consuming them. So again, all those things need to be taken into consideration when looking into the operational efficacy of these systems. But I guess it's continued evidence that, again, we have to take the Russians very seriously across all aspects of this war. They will continue to try to adapt and improve and develop countermeasures where relevant, be it from things like hardware, weapon systems, munitions, sensors, communications networks, etc. The whole spectrum of things, all the way down to, training personnel, command and control. They are human beings. They have brains. They are more than capable of adapting, learning, and improving on their approach to warfare. And that is a very dangerous thing that we must, not lose sight of, I guess, is the lesson that we take from this.
Does carbon fiber actually reduce the visibility of the Shahed?
I don't know off the top of my head. Well, you can formulate and apply carbon fiber in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of allotropes of it. There's different, ways that you can apply it. There's different structures, kind of just arrangements of the molecular geometry that you can apply. So I'd say it really depends. You'd have to be more specific than just quote unquote carbon fiber.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you read Shrike, but he put out this piece today that he tracks, among other things, he's been tracking the missile strikes and when they happen, and basically he made this little chart showing kind of the pattern Russia's been using, where they use a whole bunch of missiles that they use them as they manufacture them, and then they cut down, and then they go back to using a whole bunch, and then they use them as they make them, and down to the bottom. And this past month, or the past 2 months, they haven't really fired any missiles, really, or of the KH-101s and calibers. They fired very few. And it seems that now they're kind of falling into the same pattern where they'll go bananas for like 2 months, and then so I don't know. We don't talk about that.
I mean, they're pretty obviously stockpiling. I'm about to say, hold on, crap, I haven't updated these, but I think I can. You'll give me 1 second. I actually have graphs of all of these, and you can put them up. I need to generate new ones because I don't actually have. Here, let me just pull up the most recent set that I generated, and I'll post these in the chat, and you can put them up if you want, Andrew. I still have not posted these publicly, I don't think.
Okay.
I know you've seen them. Here we go, figure 2A. So I've been logging Russian raids, expenditures of standoff munitions for a while now. I haven't really published it because I've been wanting to try and do like a production analysis, but I've yet to get around to doing that analysis. Just because I've been busy, which is class and my commitments and person. And also because I'm working with a data set that's been published by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. That's awful. The data is terrible. I hate it. It makes no sense. It's all internally inconsistent. I don't know what to do with it. So I've kind of been just stuck thinking about that. But in any case, if you just want to look at the total raid volume, Andrew has posted them in chat. These haven't been updated in I think maybe a weekend, maybe half a week, so 3 or 4 days. You can see the big attack on Kyiv there on the far right. I think I updated after that, so it's probably 5 or 6 days ago. But yeah, you can see pretty clearly if you go to the monthly totals. I'm not sure if you able to pull that up because I'm not actually watching the stream. But in any case,
do you want me to put up the area chart or the bar chart? Just say area and bar.
Well, the one with two.
Okay, yeah.
The monthly one, not the daily one.
I'm confused.
The one with 2 is the monthly one. The one with the single chart's the daily.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Sorry, my Discord crashed.
Okay.
Anyway, yes, you can see from that chart there, you should be able to see that the expenditure of cruise missiles dropped to literally nothing, or almost nothing in both November and September. The only cruise missiles they've used in both of those months are Iskander K, which is, if you see labeled on the chart, that's SSC-7 Southpaw, the NATO reporting name, which is a ground-launched cruise missile. They've used 5 or 6 of those. That's the only one that they've been recorded as using over the past 2 months. So all the calibers, all the KH-101s, those have all been stocked or stockpiled. My rough estimate, and very rough, quote me on this if you want, I guess, with the caveat that it's very rough, is that they're producing probably 110 cruise missiles per month. My rough math was probably in the ballpark of 70 to 80 KH-101s per month and 20 to 30 calibers, somewhere in that range, which is obviously, that's a pretty massive growth. That's at least growth by a factor of 3 to 4 compared to their pre-invasion production capacity. So it's very significant. They're producing roughly as many, cruise missiles per month now as, at least for the air launch category, the KH-101s, as the US is. So again, this is massive capacity. They won't be able to execute the same volume of raids or as many raids that were as large as they were last winter, despite this, simply because, they went, essentially 200 cruise missiles a month, for 3 months in a row. They may only be able to do that 2 months in a row now, supplemented by Shaheds. So I suspect it'll be, in terms of the cruise missiles, I think it might be somewhat better than last winter. And obviously, it also had the benefit of, now we've had these 2 months of a lull with no cruise missiles, where obviously prior to the winter campaign, the Russians were still expending 100 to 200 cruise missiles a month, just not really concentrated against a specific target set. It was, very, very diffuse, in 2022. So I think it represents an overall improvement in terms of the cruise missile picture, relative to last winter. Again, it's still very much will be a challenge for Ukraine's air defense capabilities, and Ukraine's, power, electrical infrastructure, et cetera, other critical infrastructure assets. My main concern is the Shaheds. They're trying to make up the discrepancy in volume by mass production in the Shaheds. I don't know how successful this is going to be. The Shaheds, obviously, they can net an overall greater volume of munitions compared to for typical raid compared to last winter, but the average efficacy of those munitions and their ability to successfully penetrate Ukrainian air defenses is going to be less because, again, a Shahed is much less capable of getting past a Buk and S-300, NASAMS, Tor, any of these systems than a KH-101 or a Caliber is, just simply because it's a low subsonic object. Unlike KH-101, doesn't have any radar cross-section reduction measures. I mean, and even compared to Caliber, has a I shouldn't say massive. Caliber has, doesn't have any radar absorbent coating. It's just a pretty generic cruise missile. I mean, even the fact that it's traveling at, say, at a high subsonic speed, say, Mach 0.9 versus Mach 0.2 or 0.3 of a Shahed offers a pretty significant increase in survivability and its ability to, again, penetrate weapons engagement zones successfully. So I think what it's probably going to work out to on balance is that I would expect it to maybe be as bad as last winter, maybe a little bit better, actually. I don't think that the Russians have actually increased their overall raid capabilities beyond what they had last winter. I think that they have been struggling to get back to where they were, just because that they burned through all their existing pre-war inventory, basically. And that's what enabled them to have I shouldn't say success because they never broke the Ukrainian grid. They just did a serious amount of damage to it. But it's just been a struggle for them to be able to recapitalize and reconstitute that capability over the past several months. And
So
I think
the question is, what does it look like when you use a Shahed and the cruise missiles together? Because one benefit, or I don't even know if this is a benefit, but one threat or whatever, one thing the Shahed does is that the raids can last a very long time because they can kind of go out into Ukraine, like into the middle of nowhere, and just kind of like bum around for a few hours and then pop back up and do another attack like 6 hours later. So I don't know how that can work in conjunction with cruise missiles, whether you can time them to be simultaneous or whatever.
Yes. So from a mission planning or raid planning approach, what you want to do is, in the ideal case, you want to have all of your munitions arrive on target simultaneously. So the Russians, they are aware of this. They do this. If you actually, I think texty.ua, have a Twitter account, text y one word .ua. They've done some plotting of some of the raid trajectories, and there's one particular one. It consisted of Shaheds, Onyx, I think KH-59s. Or sorry, no, it was Caliber. It was Shaheds, Caliber, and Onyx. And it was a textbook, what we would call an azimuth raid. So that's a raid where you have a variety, a bunch of offensive munitions, and they are all routed and launched such that they all arrive at the same target or set of targets simultaneously from multiple directions. And if you actually look at this map, what you'll see is the Calibers get launched, they come up, they go north past Mykolaiv, they swing west, and they then hook south and approach Odessa from the north. And they reach the city, I think 1 a.m. local time. At exactly 1 a.m. local time, Shaheds and Onyx arrive from the south. So that's a textbook example of an azimuth raid. You have Calibers arriving from the north simultaneously, and then you have Shaheds and Onyxes arriving simultaneously from two different directions as well. And you want them to be spread out as much as possible to force the fire control radars and the search radars to, have to scan, that full 360-degree space. And so the Russians, they understand this. We see this with their cruise missile and Shahed routing. The challenge from a mission planning standpoint is that the Shaheds are so much slower than Caliber or KH-101. We're talking on the orders of maybe a third or a fourth of the, of cruising velocity. So that's going to be a challenge in that if they want to be able to time it correctly, they're going to need to launch the Shaheds, and the Shaheds are probably going to need to be in Ukrainian airspace for several hours traveling to their targets. And then as they're getting closer to their targets, the KH-101s and the Calibers get launched. They travel similar trajectories much faster, and then you have essentially the slower Shaheds arriving at their target right as the KH-101s and the Calibers catch up. That's how you would plan it out, basically, I guess, in conceptual terms.
And not only is the Shahed slower, but they seem to have to rely on more circuitous routes to get places. So they're slower, and it also takes forever.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's a real challenge from a mission planning standpoint, especially the issue is, I think, well, an additional issue is because Ukraine's a very large country, you have a lot of distance to cover. And so one of the benefits, again, of an azimuth raid or a stream raid, which is essentially you have a bunch of missiles approaching a target along the same trajectory as close behind one another as close as possible. The problem with particularly an azimuth raid approach here is that because of the large difference in timing between when you would need to launch them and when you would need to launch the Shaheds and the cruise missiles, there's going to be that very long period of time where it's just the Shaheds in Ukrainian airspace, and that gives Ukraine several hours to just wipe out all the Shaheds. And then the cruise missiles just end up arriving alone. So that's kind of the downside there, just because of how large a country Ukraine is. There's a very large period of time where, there's just going to where you aren't going to have that benefit of having, all these different types of munitions in the air, threatening different assets at the same time, and forcing, putting that stress on Ukrainian air defenses, both the operators and on the hardware.
Yeah, it's just it's such a giant difference in speed. and then the actual listed speed doesn't even show how big the difference is, because these Shaheds, some of them take literally 6 hours to get to their target. And these missiles take 2.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, what you would want to do is, if the Russians had, I guess, a more relevant military industrial complex, you would not want to be doing this with cruise missiles and land attack. You would not want to be doing this with land attack cruise missiles and one-way attack UAVs. You'd be wanting to do this with land attack cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. That's where the synergy really lies. Is that if you can have, KH-101s, or, in the US case, say Tomahawk or JASSM, approaching a target, and then, when it's 5 minutes out, you have ballistic missiles in the air inbound as well. That's really where the true threat of a complex raid or an azimuth raid, any of them, lie, is when you can really couple cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. You can do it with one-way attack UAVs, but it's just challenging. It's just really, it's harder to do.
And I wonder if Russia will end up doing bigger attacks for this reason, or if they're going to go back to doing like the 10 or 15 or whatever missile attacks.
What's interesting is, so theoretically, one would expect the interception rate to decrease as a function of raid size. So we call this saturation. So, radars can only track so many objects at a time. A air defense system can only engage so many targets simultaneously. And then, once it's switching from one target to another after it's destroyed a threat, it takes a couple seconds for that targeting channel, as it's called, to reset, and then it can fully prosecute an engagement of another threat. That takes time on the order of, maybe 5 to 10 seconds, shorter on really good modern systems, obviously. Those are physical limits on the amount of threats that these systems can engage simultaneously. And then again, depending on the arcs of coverage of the fire control and the search radar, you run into other limits there for where you have sensor coverage and where you don't. The launch angles, the tells, again, more hardware limitations. Where was I going with this? What was your question, Andrew? Sorry, there was a point that I was trying to get to.
will the raids be bigger or smaller?
Right.
Because like
Right. And so
last year
what
they were
you want to-
huge.
yes, exactly. So what you want to do is, with all those hardware limitations, hardware and software limitations in mind, what you want to do in principle is to have as large a raid as possible to exploit all of those and overwhelm the various aspects of the system to saturate it so it cannot effectively engage all of those threats. And then what you'll see is, once the system is saturated, the intersection will just drop off a cliff, basically. You might go from, having 80 to 90% intercepted to like 40 or 50. It'll just drop like a stone, because it just, you have physically exceeded by a large amount the number of threats that it can, that all these different systems can engage and defeat simultaneously or successively. What's interesting, though, and I think Fabian Hoffman, who's also on Twitter, has done a really good thread on it. I have some graphs about it as well, is that the Russians haven't been able to achieve saturation. Not in like a discontinuous or abrupt way, anyways, like we would have expected. So if you actually plot out interception rates as claimed by the Ukrainian Air Force, and then you plot it out versus raid size, so raid size on the x-axis and interception rate on the y-axis, what you'll find is that like the interception rate basically never drops below 75%. And the interception rate's basically, obviously it varies up and down. It seems to be around 75% on average since we started having good data in like November of last year. Some will have 95, some will have maybe a little bit, 70, 65%. But they're basically around that 75 to 80%, regardless of raid size. So the Russians have, even in the very large raids last year, the Russians were never able to really saturate Ukrainian air defense assets, which was really interesting. You can kind of see with the very large raids, they tend to drop down to about 60, 65% interception rate. You can see there is a decrease in efficacy, but it's not like an abrupt drop like you would expect. It's a continuous decrease that you get towards the very large end of that data set. And there's only like been 2 or 3, maybe 4 raids that actually met that criteria. And it's just really interesting. The Russians have not been able to saturate Ukrainian air and missile defense capabilities. They just haven't been able to.
So here's a question. If I remember back on those raids, they seemed to come in waves. Like there was like 15, then 15, then 15, or whatever the number was. Is that why they could never saturate? Because they were split up too much?
It's not ideal. I remember reading some anecdotal reports like from Ukrainian air defense operators, mainly like guys with manpads, who had been positioned along expected missile routings. Like they would say they'd have a KH-101 fly over, they'd engage it and destroy it. 5 minutes later, another KH-101 follows the exact same trajectory, engaged, destroyed. Third one, exact same trajectory, engaged, destroyed. It sounds like they were maybe trying to do like kind of like a stream tactic, which is real. It's a real thing that works if executed well. But again, and this is a very small number of anecdotal data points I'm referencing. So again, this may not be representative of the raids as a whole. You'd have to get very specific, detailed, non-public information from the Ukrainian Air Force to be able to do a quantitative assessment of this, or comprehensive assessment in any case. And sometimes it really seemed like they were trying to execute a stream raid, at least in part, for like the majority of the cruise phase. But they kind of foobarred the execution because you don't want the missiles spaced 5 minutes apart. You want them like 90 seconds apart or 60 seconds apart. You want them as close behind each other as possible. So yeah, that seems, some of the execution implementation of that seems suboptimal. Obviously remains to be seen, if that has changed or if they've improved. The other thing is that you might do it in waves, depending if you have missiles following very different trajectories, namely, if you have some missiles following trajectories that are much longer than some other missiles, you might want to stagger the launchers again to have them arrive at the same set of targets simultaneously. That's another reason.
Yeah.
So I suspect it's probably a mixture of those cases. I suspect in some cases they were probably trying to set up a missile stream and just kind of flubbed it. And others, I think they're probably setting up for like azimuth raids or having missiles, fly long trajectories north over Kyiv, and others fly potentially maybe shorter, trajectories directly over southern Ukraine, for example, to whatever targets.
Yeah, like having them take different paths obviously requires different launch times, but I just remember it being described as waves, just waves of missiles coming, and
I remember that
was
from,
weird.
like, Vitaly Kim's Telegram channel.
Yeah. What else is there? I don't know. I can't think of anything else. I don't know. Is there any other topic? Gick, do you have a question?
Not a question, but we can discuss the book which was hit yesterday, because that's also still an open question, and maybe John can answer it now, since he learned something from since yesterday.
Book.
What did I learn since yesterday? Because I actually don't know.
So what hit it?
I don't know.
I called it Excalibur.
So the three things that were under discussion, at least with amongst ourselves here, was Excalibur, Harm, or Volcano, which was Volcano's like the Italian guided extended range 155 millimeter round that the Germans provided. I don't know. So I wish that it would be so much easier if we had a better view of the launcher, because if it was a TEL and not a TELR, we would know immediately that it wasn't Harm, because Harm can't home on the TELs, just the TELRs. So that would have answered our question immediately. We know it's either Excalibur or Volcano. I'm not sure. I'm really, really not sure. I think getting a Harm engagement on camera is tricky. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying it's tricky business. And I think that would imply something, again, it's a single data point that might imply something very interesting about the coordination integration between Ukrainian UAV observers and the Ukrainian Air Force, which would be very, very excellent if that was actually the case, if they've actually been able to successfully at scale have UAV spotters from the ground forces coordinate, air to surface fires from the Air Force. That would be genuinely fantastic. I'm not sure, because the UAV would probably just be observing for effect on target, because you'd more or less have to have if my understanding of how they've been employing a Harm is accurate, they'd need to have essentially search coordinates plugged in advance on the flight line on the apron prior to sorting, because they're using it in pre-briefed mode. And then let me see if there's a good I know there's a good diagram of this. Here, Andrew, do you want to pull this up? 1 second.
I have the still of our projectile on screen right now.
Put this up, Andrew. I'm going to confuse some people about Harm for the next 5 minutes.
Oh, great.
Right. So with Harm, so Harm has 4 modes. It has self-protect, target of opportunity, pre-briefed, and equations of motion. There's some good Twitter threads about target of opportunity, self-protect, and pre-briefed. I've never seen anybody on Twitter talk about equations of motion, but it's a thing. So essentially, what self-protect mode is Harm is integrated with the aircraft's radar warning receiver, and when the radar warning receiver detects what it determines or estimates is a hostile SAM, fire control radar, or search radar, it can upload the approximate coordinates to Harm, and then Harm can be automatically launched along that general vector to basically suppress whatever radar is targeting the aircraft. Then there's target of opportunity, which basically uses the Harm seeker to scan for radio frequency emissions from possible hostile fire control and search radars. That then gets uploaded to the pilot's interface and then classified, and then they can then choose, what targets they want to launch against. That's pretty standard. Pre-briefed is, as well as equations of motion. That's essentially where you're using, that's kind of like the maximum performance setting of Harm, That's usually when you're using it with harm targeting system, which has a very sophisticated passive radio frequency sensor in it, and it can detect radio frequency emission from radars and communication systems and other threat emitters at very long range, classify them with a high degree of accuracy, and then what you can basically do is you can have rather than having, you can essentially do a lock on after launch. So whereas with with self-protect and target of opportunity, from the moment it's on the rail, when it launches, the harm seeker, has acquired that radio frequency emission from the threat emitter, and it flies directly to the target based upon that emission, tracking it the whole time from the instant it comes off the rail to impact or until the threat emitter stops emitting. With pre-briefed, what that basically allows you to do is to loft the missile to a greater range, because harm targeting system sensors exceed the range of harms, and so you can detect things at long range, calculate their estimated position, and then essentially calculate a set of coordinates that you want to loft harm to. It'll get lofted to that point. It'll begin to dive down. Its seeker will activate, and will begin searching for the corresponding threat emitter identified by harm targeting system. What I think, and what most others have discussed this think, is that we jigged up a way for Ukrainians to use pre-briefed mode based upon known coordinates of Russian SAMs on the ground to essentially pre-program in a loft point. They fly to an approximate release point, release the weapon, and then flies to that, coordinate entered on the ground, prior to the aircraft sorting, and then begin searching for, whatever Russian SAM. That takes a while to do. It's not super responsive. So the location of that book would have already had to been determined well in advance, like probably an hour in advance or so, maybe 30, 45 minutes at least. And then they'd have a UAV up doing a BDA, battle damage assessment. That's plausible. The issue is, I think, from a practical standpoint, is that book is like 48 kilometers from the front line. Excalibur is maybe 50, 55 kilometers fired from an L-52 gun on a Caesar. That thing would have to be firing from the docks in Kherson to be able to reach that with Excalibur. And so, again, unless they have a system that can fire Excalibur to a longer range than's been publicly advertised, I just don't think. I think Volcano is more likely than Excalibur, to be honest.
Archer.
Well, Archer is the same L-52 gun though as Caesar, doesn't it? Well, I'm not sure. It's a good question. I know we got Erlen talking about Archer. We're never going to escape now.
No. I
No, but that's a
accidentally
different
minimized
thing.
everything again.
Yeah,
Oh, God.
I wanted to show the volcano rods I sent it.
I have it up,
very,
and I
it's,
minimized everything in the process.
it's a very strange shell, but
It's from a naval gun.
Is it?
Yeah, it's for the 76 millimeter gun that the Italians have. It's a derivative of it.
Anyways, so me and a friend, we were looking at some very funny article written in La Repubblica, which is an Italian newspaper, the other day, where an Italian peacenik is basically visiting the factory where they produce them, and is writing this very strange kind of poetry, melancholic poetry about these blobs of metal which kill people. And in his article, he reveals the exact numbers that they produce and the exact number that is sent to Ukraine, which is kind of interesting.
Very interesting. Okay.
I mean,
So
it'd
they
be
get-
very nice if we had so the 127 millimeter version, which like the naval version has a range of like let's see, does it have a range estimate here of like let's see, 15 kilometer. Well, it's a naval gun, so yeah, it's gonna be less than 155. There's just no good. Maybe it's because it's all in Italian. That's probably why. Oh, well. Oh, well. No, this is wonderful. I think it has 100-kilometer range from an M777. Jesus Christ. Okay. 1 second. There's a table here for this from BAE. Yeah, I think this was Volcano. Or Volcano. Jesus. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a pretty long range. Yeah. It's isn't it a sub-caliber munition, right? So,
Yeah, it looks like it. So this would be about a 70-kilometer shot, I'd have to assume, the 5-inch Sabot. Because the Urka would be the 100-kilometer one.
Yeah, they're getting about 300 a month of this.
Yeah.
That's decent.
Just for the record, there are different versions of the Volcano, and there's the extended range version, which is probably those 100 kilometers, and Ukraine isn't getting them.
Oh, wonderful.
At least not so far.
Well, there's the ballistic extended range, and then there's the guided long range. So,
So yeah, that's what happened to the book. But you can see the little projectile come in. It comes in relatively slowly, which is interesting.
Yeah, so Harm has a cutoff velocity of like Mach 3. High speeds in the name. I don't know what its actual terminal velocity would be though.
Yeah, there's like, this is not a very long distance that this drone is filming. Like what, maybe 100 meters, and there's like several frames of this coming in. So it's like 1, 2, 3, and then it explodes. This is this book was interesting. It was, nobody can decide what killed it.
So according to the Italian, the Italian military's official website, they have an article about the volcano, and they say that the guided conventional ballistic version has up to 70-kilometer range.
So 70-kilometer range would be let's map it, because I can, because we have a little circle drawing tool, so why not? So boom, 70 kilometers is that roughly goes out to where Ukraine typically has their artillery. They typically have artillery roughly here. Anyways, while John is probably looking up something, I don't know.
I'm trying to figure out what the difference between the ballistic extended range is and the guided long range. So I found another stat sheet which references, so with the 52 caliber length barrel, with the BER, it's 50-kilometer range, 70-kilometer range with the 52. What the hell am I talking about? Yeah. So the BER is 50 kilometers from a 52 caliber length barrel. GLR is 70 kilometers with the same length barrel. I'm just trying to see what the actual difference is between them. I think I keep seeing pictures next to one another of two different versions, but they aren't labeled. So I don't actually know which is which.
Gick, do you want to talk about the trains?
I only saw the video today. I mean, there were reports about it already yesterday. I think that some funnily dressed guys, probably, I don't know, in Russia were blowing up some trains. But I think yesterday there was no evidence. And today, I think 2 videos popped up of pretty much everything on fire surrounding what used to be a train.
Yeah, there's I honestly don't know that much about the trains. From what I understand, they attacked the tunnel, right? They rerouted around the tunnel to a bridge, and then they attacked the bridge, and now they're sad. Now Russia's sad. That's basically all I know. I can't really add any more than that. And people keep asking questions. I honestly have nothing to add beyond that.
Yeah, I think we just got to trust them.
Yeah. Anyways, so the frontline news today, to be honest, there isn't that much news. That's why we're talking about other things for most of the time. But the main news is obviously Marienka. Marienka. I always forget how to say it. Anyways, it's not going good. Is the short of it. I know Gick is more hesitant than I am regarding what's going on here.
If I may, by the way.
Yeah, sure.
I just confirmed. So I checked with some of the video, the only video of Volcano that we have definitively in Ukraine being loaded, and as well as Germany to Ukraine. Germany supplied both versions, the ballistic extended range and the long range guided. Germany provided both. So they have them. They have whichever version, the 70-kilometer one, the guided long range, they should have it in principle.
That's cool. Right. So, Marinka. Today or last night, I think, maybe, I'm not sure which, but Russia posted a video with a little flag in Marinka. The flag is in this house all the way on the southwestern edge of Marinka. So basically as far south and west as you can get in the city. I've also heard that they've broken through this northern part, although that's not entirely confirmed. But from what I understand, they've also broken through this northern part, and I'm not sure exactly if Ukraine has any claim in Marinka anymore. To be honest, it could be completely captured by now, or at best contested in the rear. One of the artillery groups that artillery telegrams that we follow was recently rotated to here. Yesterday they were talking about how they were supporting infantry. They were supporting Ukrainian infantry with their artillery. And today they posted. Here, I'll find it, I guess. They basically posted that Marinko's probably lost. I'll find the exact quote though. Give me a second. Anyways, can you talk for a second, Gick?
Well, I can explain why I'm a bit more hesitant, because so far we've only seen that video of the Russian flag hoisted there, and it comes out basically immediately after a period of very bad weather and low visibility, and also with strong winds interdicting a lot of drone operations. Hence, having a flag hoisted on the edge of that town, you can sneak up there more or less easily in those in that environment. That's the one point why I'm more hesitant on calling it. It may as well have happened, or it may as well have Russian soldiers in there and actually, having occupied more or less all of Marinka on the southern part. I just don't think that video is enough to definitely say so. I would rather wait for more, sophisticated proof, like Ukraine actually shelling that area.
I agree. I agree. I can't find his post. I think he deleted it. Yeah, I think he deleted it. But this is the quote. So he said, "We could not. I'm sorry. We tried and did several times more than we should have. But if everything depended on only a handful of our calculations, sad face." So that was the quote. I will. I'll just I don't know how to show this honestly. I'll take a screenshot. Here, I'll take a screenshot. I think that's the easiest way for me to share it on stream. This is the quote. So yeah, and he's deleted it since then apparently. So he replaced this with an extremely angry message that I can't read because it would probably get me banned on YouTube if I read it. So it just says lots of bad, angry things about the city, about Russians in general. So yeah, people. I honestly don't know what else to say about Marinka. We don't have solid proof. From what I understand, there will be proof coming from this northern part. I'm pretty sure there are videos that just haven't been released yet on this northern attack. Granted, I don't know the full result of that attack. I know some things that happened there, but I don't know the full extent of it and whether the Russians did in fact capture this ground or if they later retreated. And the same with the southern part. I do kind of think that Russia did capture everything. Honestly, I do kind of think they did, but it hasn't been confirmed yet.
At the same time, maybe for the lookout, someone promised a video for tomorrow, I think, on the Russian side. So we might have more or less definite proof tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that's the video I'm talking about, to be honest.
Okay.
If it is, they pushed along this road with a BMP. They dismounted infantry. BMP was exploded. Infantry were not exploded. That's pretty much what happened. It's this flag video is not what makes me think that Russia captured Marinka. It was if this flag video were alone, I would laugh at it because it's like almost comical to think that video proves anything. Because remember that video not too long ago, it was like what, September, where they had a whole bunch of infantry literally crawling on their bellies, like over here. Like it was like in this field, I think. They're like crawling on their bellies trying to like get to these houses while like Ukraine was like hitting them with mortars and FPV drones. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I also remember the Ukrainian flag flying in Mariupol this summer.
Yeah. So like them crawl, they're literally on their bellies crawling because I think that's kind of the only way you can maneuver in this general area because there's no cover at all. All the buildings are gone. It's beyond destroyed. It's past the point of ruin. It's not a ruined city anymore. It's just like nothing now. Like I'm sure in spring this will be like a field of wildflowers. That's how destroyed it is. So to move around, you have to crawl. You have to like get on your belly and pretend to be a worm and try to cross no man's land. I'm not sure you can do that in normal weather. So which makes sense that they did this in bad weather. Erland, what do you want to say?
Are you saying that Russia potentially captured a field?
Well, this part of the city, like very specifically right here, is just gone. It doesn't exist anymore.
So it's a pile of dirt field.
Yeah, this more western part, these are like ruins. Like this part is ruins, but over here is like just nothing. Like there's like as like the city has been like just like evaporated. Like as they've gone through, it's just been absolutely destroyed. I think when people think of a ruined city, they think of like like in World War II, like all those pictures of like Berlin and whatever with like all the buildings like knocked over and um, like I think that's like when people think of a ruined city, that's kind of what they think, or like like what Bakhmut is right now, or Avdiivka. Like it's like all the buildings are like half knocked over and whatever. Like they call that a ruined city. This is a ruined city. Like this is like they took all of those half knocked over buildings and then kept shooting them until there was no more. Like that's what Marianka is. So it's a question about why would like if Russia captured it, why would it happen so quickly? And I think the answer to that would be if this happened, I think the only reason it would happen is if Ukraine just withdrew. I think I kind of think that's well would be the result. Like at some point someone just said it's not worth it. Because I can't imagine Russia actually pushing Ukraine out of these positions over the course of like 3 days. It doesn't make sense. They've been trying for 12 years and they haven't been able to. So, to do it in 3 days, it seems a bit much to me. Especially because the southern houses are very ruined, but these more northern ones were not that ruined. Some of them even still have roofs, which is weird. So, um, yeah, we've just been recently getting videos from this place, which is also bizarre. Yeah, we've been recently getting videos from here. This is, for example, one of them. This is a screenshot anyway. They still have roofs. Yeah, Erlen, go on.
Yeah, I'm just saying, thinking that it might be that it was easy to hold this for the Ukrainians relatively compared to what the Russians would had to sacrifice to continuing these pushes. But the recent weather might have changed that, and they just decided to not sacrifice too much to hold the positions there
Yeah, now,
and withdraw to more favorable positions.
yeah, they don't have to withdraw very far. We're talking like a few hundred meters to the west is the next Ukrainian line. And I have to say this name, which I can't say. It's a Herifka. I can't say the G, the H. I can't say it. I can't. Herifka, Herifka. Is that it?
How's it
Herifka.
spelled?
It's
Hyurivka.
it's the G's that I can't say. I don't know how to say that Slavic G. I can't do it. I have to go with either H or English G.
Is that it? Did I spell it correct? I put it in chat, or am I totally wrong?
It's the double I.
Oh Christ!
Yeah, it has the G. That has the G that we can't say, and then the double I that's harder
Hey,
to say.
Orhivka?
Hyurivka. Yes.
Just
But I think the Ukrainians will be more happy if you pronounce an English H rather than a G.
can I just call it George? That's what it means, right? Like Saint George, I think. That's what it literally means.
Sure. Yeah. St. George Town, I guess. Yeah.
But yeah, this is Wargonzo said something remarkably stupid, probably one of the most stupid that I've heard in a long time. That's why he's in the thumbnail today, because he said something just so stupid. I'm gonna find it. Here it is. He said that Mariinka is important because it's a logistics hub. A logistics hub, okay, for the Ukrainian armed forces, through which ammunition is delivered to Kharkivka and all these other towns that I don't feel like pronouncing. The capture of Mariinka will cut off these villages from the enemy forces. And that is why Ukraine will fight for the remaining positions. He is saying that Ukraine is using Marinka as a logistics hub to supply all of the surrounding towns. Those towns are all to the west of Marinka. So in Wargonzo's mind, Ukraine gets their resources in Marinka. I guess like that's how it works, right? It's like they have like a bunch of little like peasants with their hatchets, like chopping down trees, right? Or like maybe they're mining gold or something. I don't know. But they're getting their resources in Marinka, and then they ship them out to the west, right? That's how this works. I guess we're playing like a real time strategy game, and that's what Marinka is. That is Wargonzo speaking. Yes, the Wargonzo. Yeah, I'm not sure what drugs he took to come up with that that analysis. But yeah, this is the news today though. Like there is another piece of news in Stepova. It seems that Russia may have captured part of the town. I'm not convinced, honestly. I'm not convinced they have. We have some video of Russian forces getting hit by FPV drones in the town, but to me that doesn't really prove much. I don't know, Gick, do you think they actually captured part of this town?
No, I think they've been there a couple of times, but I don't think they have any stable presence.
Yeah, this video right here that is under the icon of this cluster munition. This video is spectacular. So if you want to see a spectacular video that I can't show on YouTube, you can go to the map and click this and watch this video by God's Work FPV. The video is great.
Yeah, I would just recommend that you actually download it and set the speed to, I don't know, 0.5 or something, because the video is horribly sped up, and you're gonna miss that. People just disappear, all of them.
So I don't really know what else to talk about in terms of frontline news. There really has not been much, to be honest. There's been fighting around the Kupiansk with no changes that I know of. Russia keeps saying that they get into Sinkivka, but there's been zero evidence, and I'm almost certain they're all lying. We know that Russia has gotten to these like buildings like right here, but I don't think they ever created any sort of position there. I think they were trying to move up. They're probably trying to establish themselves there, but failed. They may be taking over like this part of this forest. It's really hard to map forests. I kind of don't try to map forests, but they may be in this little section of forest here. And yesterday we had some attacking of a big boy bomber drone moving in and dropping some bombs right here in this forest here. So it's possible Russia controls this part of this forest too. It's really hard to map forests. There's so many trees. Beyond that, there's been a lot of propaganda about this northern. I feel like there's more propaganda than action sometimes. This time they've been saying that, Ukraine is ready to fold and go home. They're sick of fighting. Everyone gives up. So that's the propaganda these days, in case you're curious. And the propaganda that's earlier in the fall was that, oh, we blew up all the bridges. There's no more supplies. They'll collapse within a few hours, etc. That didn't happen. Yeah, there've been more engagements in the Kremenna area, especially towards Torska, but I don't know of any actual changes in front line. Gick, have you seen anything from Torska today that I missed?
No, I'm basically all I get is drone videos, strikes on Russian vehicles from that area. It really doesn't allow us to adjust the front line anywhere.
No, yeah. There's an airstrike on the bridge in Nevska. Well, there were a whole bunch of airstrikes in Nevska, but today there was an airstrike on the bridge. Yesterday there was a bunch of airstrikes that I could not geolocate because they were stupid and I didn't like them. They're all in this one video.
The airstrike today on the bridge is actually interesting because on the zoom after the bomb hit, you can actually see the pontoon bridge. So the bridge was previously destroyed. They placed the pontoon on top of it, and then they hit it with another bomb just now. And to be fair, I mean, the placement of that pontoon, it was like some Ukrainian engineer provided pictures of that, so that was like no secret. It was on Twitter for more than a month that there's a pontoon.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a class of pontoon where it's not a secret to anybody. So, like, there are some pontoons that you try to be a little secretive about, like maybe the more tactical ones, but these pontoons that are like bridging major bridges, I think everyone knows there's a pontoon there. Or you could just look at like Sentinel and see it.
Well, you can spot that one. I mean, it's really hard to see it even on the BDA later in the video if you don't know what to look for. It could just be rubble. At the same time, I don't know if it's really destroyed.
Yeah, it's also hard to kill a pontoon, isn't it? It's pretty difficult. Yeah. Even a direct hit might not destroy it. We've seen it before of pontoons taking direct hits and being back in action like a day later. Anyways, I don't have any news about the Siversk area. Has there been anything in Siversk? I can't remember anything.
I do get frequent videos from there, but often it's really hard to geolocate. I do feel that a lot more is going on than we put on the map, because like that area it's really a pain to find the spots.
Yes. And one thing about this area is Ukraine has some of its best troops here. Like I'm just gonna say, the K2 battalion is like my favorite battalion because first they use smoke, which is great. I love smoke. But second, they just know what they're doing. They're very professional. And I think the way that they were created set them up for success because they were originally a recon unit. They were a recon unit that was so successful that they started giving them more and more resources. And they've used those resources brilliantly. And as they've done so, they keep getting bigger and bigger. Now they're a battalion. Like, I swear, like they should just get all the resources because they know how to do it. Like they know how to wage war. I feel like a lot of, I mean, I don't want to like insult people, but like the way that Ukraine made like brand new brigades out of nowhere, I don't agree with that strategy. I think doing something like promoting the K2 battalion by giving them more and more resources is a better way to build a fighting force. And K2 should just get all the resources. 'Cause they're just good at this. They're good at winning. They're good at defending and attacking, and they're good at conserving the lives of their soldiers. So, yeah, so the K2 battalion is defending this area, or at least they have for a very long time. They may have moved, to be honest, but I don't think so. Anyways, there's the news from Kromova or whatever. Anyway, so this town was almost certainly captured by Russia. I know a guy who is in this general area. He's actually very close to the town, but he was not in the town. I just want to make that clear. He was not in the town. He's just close to it. And he said the day that Russia declared that they captured the town, he basically said they didn't. And then the next day he was like, okay, they did. So like I'm pretty convinced at this point. Because I trust him very much, very much. Like I don't think he's ever been wrong about anything, to be honest. But the original day he said that they had moved into the town, they had not established themselves and were kicked out with high casualties. And then shortly thereafter launched a second attack that was ongoing that whole day. And a lot of Ukrainians were saying that it was premature to say that Russia had captured anything, that there's heavy fighting, etc., which I think was actually probably factually true at that time. And then the following day, everyone stopped talking. They were like, I don't want to talk about it. And I think that's when Russia basically captured the town over that night. I think basically all the news was probably like 12 to 18 hours too early, from what I can tell. But was otherwise true. From what I understand, Russia does not control this bit of highway here. I'm not sure if Ukraine controls it either. It might be a gray area. And I know that Russia has not crossed the highway. So everything to the south of the highway, or southwest of the highway, is under Ukrainian control. And keep in mind that this is a hill, and these trees are the crest of the hill. So yeah, that's kind of all the news I got. I don't know, do you have anything from Klashivka?
I don't think so. I mean, we see basically on a daily basis drone videos from both sides around Andriivka and Klishivka, and it does appear that the front never moves. We do. I mean, one nice thing is that we know that there are some rare vehicles destroyed heading for Andriivka, which are not yet published. So expect something rare to show up there, and that is kind of cool. Yeah, but else I don't think there's too much to say for that region.
Yep. In Mayorsk, we had an interesting video yesterday of Russia shelling this town pretty heavily. This was interesting. It was very interesting because we, even recently, even a few days ago, we have been hearing about Russia attacking around Mayorsk. And this is, all of a sudden, Ukraine is like attacking the town, apparently. It's very weird. I'm not sure what to make of it. I'm also not convinced when exactly this happened. It does seem somewhat recent-ish.
Yeah, I would agree. Also, one caveat is that some of the other mappers I checked basically when I geolocated some parts of that video. I checked other mappers, and maybe also we missed something in the past, because most of them have Mayorsk either even in Ukrainian control or in gray zone. So it might have been that we just needed to correct it.
Maybe. I mean, a lot of them have been saying that for a very long time, and I think they were wrong. I think because this dates back like a long time. Like we're talking about events that happened like many, many, many months ago, and at the time, I think they were wrong then. But I'm not sure what happened in the intervening months. So, thank you, Kelly. Kelly gives us a tip. Thank you. It's very generous of you. Thank you very much. But yeah, this maybe it is a gray area. But the reason why I think they were wrong at that time back then, it's just we're really going back in time, which is like a time machine. The reason why I think they were wrong is because Russia had they had set up positions along like right around here, and there's a bridge here. I can't remember where the bridge is. I think it's this bridge. They had set up a defensive position in this bridge, and there were videos of Russians going on patrol along the stretch of railway. And that's why I think they were wrong. Because I don't know why you would patrol this railway if you didn't control the town. Because that just seems weird to me. That's kind of all the areas to talk about. So here's a question. Do you think Russia is committing to a wider offensive, or are they just a bunch of localized attacks? I think Russia is basically everything that's happened over the past 2 months or a month and a half, whatever. I think this is basically Russia finishing their offensive from last winter, because they had mostly captured a bunch of things, and they left Ukraine, like Ukraine's defensive positions, in a state of disarray. But they didn't have the forces at the time to finish the job. Now they've finished the job on those places. So I kind of think this is just them finishing their offensive from last winter. I don't view losing Marinka as a big problem. I think the defensive lines behind Marinka are very, very strong. I think Ukraine has always known that they can't hold Marinka. It was like a buffer. It was a buffer for them to use to do other things. I don't think any rational person thought that they could hold it forever. The city's destroyed. Like, it's not there anymore. How can you defend it forever? So they've been building these defenses, and the terrain behind it very much favors Ukraine. This whole area is on a hill with densely packed towns and cities, and it has this like natural moat of a river and this large reservoir. It's like a natural castle, basically. And the only way to it is these parallel roads that are very difficult to move down.
Honestly, I think the Russian goal might be Novomikhailivka in the south. Because if you look at that, you can totally use Marinka as a launch pad.
Their goal is Konstantinivka.
Yeah.
They want to take control of this whole highway. That's why they want Vuhledar, they want Konstantinivka, and Pobieda. They want to control this entire highway. They've always wanted it. It's one of their biggest priorities. It always has been. So basically since I don't know, like April, this has been probably one of their number one priorities in everything. Like this was more important than Bakhmut. This was more important than like everything. and they're very close to achieving it. And it does. They want this for a lot of reasons. First, they want to push Ukraine away from Mariupol. They want to have better control over this land bridge to Crimea. So getting Ukraine out of Vuhledar is very important for that. Because once Ukraine gets pushed out of Vuhledar, they're basically out of range of Mariupol. Like right now, they're barely in range. They can sort of hit it, but if they lose Vuhledar, they can't anymore. So, and they want to just lock up this whole Donetsk area, and Avdiivka, they need to push Ukraine out of Avdiivka to control the northern flank of Donetsk. So if they get Avdiivka and get this little line here, I think this is one of their biggest military priorities, which is one reason why I think was such a tremendous mistake for the West to not respond to this more actively. We really needed to give Ukraine the ammo to not let this happen. But we didn't. We were busy bickering in our own little congresses and parliaments about our own little issues that barely exist in reality or all politics. Everyone's bickering instead of reacting to the actual threat here. And the threat is giving Russia one of the biggest victories that it needed to cement one of their primary goals of this war. And we're giving it to them. So yeah, that's I don't really know what else to say. I guess we could talk about the yesterday there was a 6-missile air raid on civilians, I guess. It hit 3 different towns, or I think 2 of them are cities and one's a town, I think. Anyway, they hit 3 different areas. There was a 6-month-old baby wounded, a bunch of other children wounded, hitting apartment buildings, etc. Destroyed a police station, I think, which was, I believe, used as a point of invincibility. So it was, I think, anyway, so it was like a civilian target, really. And so it was just, that was all very depressing. Anyway, do you have a happy note to end on? Any of you have anything happy to say?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Papa Papager has not disappointed us. He has made a new announcement. Not only is Ukraine licensing domestic production of Fuchs armored personnel carriers, out of the blue, they have licensed production of Lynx infantry fighting vehicles.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so they aim to have the contract signed with the Ukrainian government early next year. They plan to put the Fuchs plant into operation in, tweet, 1 second, within 6 to 7 months of contract signing, and then to have the Lynx plant online within 12 to 13 months of contract signing. So Lynx would presumably be coming online early 2025, Fuchs towards the end of 2024.
That's cool. Is there a version?
They might need to. One possible issue is Lynx, as its ship standard, has an Israeli ATGM system. They may have to redesign part of the turret to get a non-Israeli ATGM system, and maybe remove some controlled stuff from a couple other countries. But yeah, it's excellent.
Is there a version of the Fuchs that has like a turret?
Yes, it's being created specifically for Ukraine.
That's cool.
Yeah, so there's this thing called, I think, the Fuchs Evo, I think, Evolution. And it's basically an entirely, it's a modernization of the original design. And Ukraine is specifically looking at one that has a modernized turret from the Martyr II, so 20 millimeter autocannon. 2025 millimeter. I can't remember which. Or not Martyr 2, not Martyr 2, Martyr.
That's interesting. I would have guessed they would use one of their own turrets, but whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I would have thought that. I mean, the BTR-4 turret on the Gra module or whatever it's called is very good. But yeah.
Yeah. But they have a few good turrets. I can't remember the names of any of them, but they are.
I know it's something that Ukraine can actually produce. I don't know, they can't produce a lot of them, but they can produce some really good ones. Actually, they're really quality. I think for the Fuchs order, the Ukrainians were reportedly looking at a 4 to 5 digit order. So they were looking at ordering somewhere in the ballpark of at least 1,000 up to 10,000, probably APCs. And then I would imagine, you know, if money is no object, they'd probably want to order like 2,000-3,000 plus Lynxes, just, you know, back of the envelope math.
Yeah, that would be nice. Although, probably take forever to get them. Were they ordering like 1,000 of the CB90s or whatever?
Yeah, with Slovakia. I mean, they're trying to allegedly per Papa Papager, they're trying to facilitate the Fuchs plant to have an annual capacity of 400 vehicles per year, which is pretty solid.
Yeah, it's not bad.
You can do so with a large plant. So the most extreme case would be the joint manufacturing in the Lima tank plant in the U.S. It's facilitized for 150 Abrams a month. So you do the math on that, 1,500, 1,800 Abrams a year at max rate. That, you know, was its Cold War, wartime surge capacity. It still has all the tooling, all the production facilities to do that. We just don't have the personnel or supply chains for it anymore. So we could do that again, but it would take us a while to get there. So I'm not sure how big the plant they would want to go for in Ukraine is. I assume there's probably some size limitations since they might want to disperse it across a couple different facilities to mitigate vulnerability to Russian long-range strike capabilities. But depending on how much they want to build it out, I mean, with a modern production line, with modern tooling and manufacturing equipment, with only like 200, 300, maybe 400 employees, you can achieve gargantuan outputs. So, they could probably scale beyond 400 if they really wanted to without that much difficulty. And obviously, add more cost, take more time, need more resources and people, but it can probably be done.
Yeah, I wonder what the bottleneck on production would be. I imagine it'd be a turret.
I mean, the engine comes to mind, at least initially, and probably optics and stuff like that.
I don't know what kind of engine it uses.
Yeah. Well, so the whole thing with the Fuchs is they have to build the production line from scratch because Rheinmetall used to have a production line for it in Germany, but they sold the entire physical production line to was it Algeria or Morocco? I think it was Morocco. They literally boxed up the contents of the factory. They stripped the walls bare of all the tooling, of all the manufacturing equipment, put them in shipping containers and ship them over to Morocco, and they set it up there. So they have to essentially they have to manufacture the manufacturing infrastructure all over again.
It's exciting. Maybe they learned something along the way. Maybe they could make it
I would imagine that. Well, Fuchs has a fairly mature production line just because it was in production for so long. I'd imagine the one that gets built in Ukraine might be somewhat more modernized or sophisticated.
Yeah, people are excited because it's a boat tank. Everyone loves boat tanks.
What do you mean boat tank?
It's amphibious.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah.
Everyone loves boats.
Like the BMP-3, or it's like the BMP, but not a tomb on tracks.
Yeah, or a BTR.
Not a tomb on wheels.
Yeah, I bet it even has a normal door. I don't know. I'm gonna look up Fuchs door now. I wonder if it's just like a triangle. Oh, it looks like a normal door. Yeah, it's just a normal door. Look at that. How come the Soviet Union couldn't just put a door? I can't find a good picture. Anyway. Look at that. There's a door. A normal door. So you open it and walk out like a normal person. It's not just a triangle you have to crawl out of. Anyways, I think that's the news for the stream. I'm probably gonna do another stream tomorrow because there's another thing I want to talk about, but I don't want to talk about it today. The stream tomorrow would be about the unit. I calculated all of the stats for the Russian losses for the past month, and I'll do a stream about that. Maybe it'll probably only be like 5 or 10 minutes long. I'll do that tomorrow. Anyways, thank you for coming, John.
Happy to be here. There's now a CEO of a defense contractor is now in my replies arguing with me. This is fun.
That's cool. And thank you for coming, Gick and Erland.
Thank you for having me.
Oh,
Thanks for the stream.
people are asking, what is a Lynx? A Lynx is an infantry fighting vehicle. It's like,
Rheinmetall developed two tracked infantry fighting vehicles. So the Bundeswehr had the Marder. That was their standard tracked infantry fighting vehicle throughout the latter part of the Cold War. And it's since been replaced or is being replaced by Puma. And so Rheinmetall developed two infantry fighting vehicles. They had their Lynx. They had the Lynx, which was sort of their standard infantry fighting vehicle for the export market. And then I don't want to call it a spinoff because I'm not sure how directly related the two designs are. But separate from that, they developed Puma, which was specifically to tender to the Bundeswehr's IFV requirement to replace Marder. And so they ended up with producing Puma for the Bundeswehr. And then as an aside from that, Lynx is their standard export IFV.
yeah, this is a Puma. Puma. That's a Puma. And this is a Lynx.
Which one is the US buying?
Then weren't they gonna buy like a modified Puma? I think it's highly modified though. Anyways, anyway, I think that's it. We answered the question. What is Lynx? It's an IFV. I'm lost. I have too many windows open. I don't even know what's going on. Okay, so what time tomorrow? I don't know. Like whenever I feel like it. It's only gonna be like 5 or 10 minutes long, so it's not gonna be like a big thing. Anyway, so goodbye everybody.